Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. It's time for new acquisitions, and this week was a whopper of a week for comic books. I have tons of really cool and interesting stuff to talk about. This is the best week for comics in a couple months, in my opinion. Boy, did I read some cool stuff this week, and I can't wait to tell you about it. As always, I want to say thank you to Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas for helping us out with the show, and if you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check out Elite Comics. It's an absolutely fantastic place to shop for comic books. And you might notice something a little bit different tonight on the show. Today I am sitting quite a bit closer to the camera. Usually I sit farther back. I sit back here. It gives me room to move, to kind of spread my arms. I'm a talk with my hands type person, and it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of a standard blog style angle for somebody who's taking up the whole frame, and one person by himself. But I was thinking about this before I started filming. I just came up with this idea today. If I sit a little bit closer to the camera, it's a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit more intimate, like you're sitting in the room with me, like we're having a real conversation. I mean, we're not. I'm still going to be talking at you because you're not here to reciprocate or to add anything to the conversation, but it's more relaxing for me. I'm finding I prefer it. So I hope you do too. Is everybody comfortable? Are you ready to get started? Do you have a pillow? You have something comfortable to sit on? Maybe one of those like a comfy, warm rice bags to put behind your neck and sit back with. Do you have a nice, cold, refreshing beverage? If you were here, I might offer you some cookies or some hummus. But as it stands, if you need to go get something, I'm happy to wait for you. I'll just be here, waiting for you to grab. Okay, is everybody ready? Are we good? Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and get started then. Today with Serenity, Leaves on the Wind #1 from Dark Horse. I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to do a couple more independent things at the end of the show. It's just not big two stuff. But I'm going to start with Serenity. This is a book that I have been marginally looking forward to reading, hearing that they were going to come back and finally do comics set after Serenity, stuff that was supposed to be canonical, and finally start telling the story of what happens after Serenity. And I'm always a little bit skeptical with comic book projects like this because you never know exactly what the quality of them is going to be, even if it's from the creators of the thing. I mean, this is Zach Whedon writing, Zach Whedon and Jorge Yanti, and you've got Joss Whedon executive producing, but you don't know really what that means. You don't know how much Joss Whedon really is involved in this, and that kind of thing. But Dark Horse has had a really good track record with this stuff. This is in the same vein as Buffy season 8 and 9, and now coming up with 10 pretty soon, and Angel and Faith and stuff, where this is stuff that the idea is it is canonical, and it is supposed to be of a similar or the same quality as the TV show was, and so you hope it works. And I gotta tell you, man, just having read the first issue, I wish we were getting this story on screen. This is fantastic. Everything is very consistent. The language is perfect. Everybody sounds in character, and it's immediately interesting and engaging, and it makes sense to start where he's starting. Basically, this is the aftermath of what happened with Serenity, and we're seeing the way in which both Mal and Firefly's and the Firefly's presence in the universe, and what they've been doing behind the scenes in their kind of rebellious activities against the Alliance has affected now the universe at large, and majorly, most importantly, the revelation that the Reavers were created because of a horrible experience gone wrong, and that it's the Alliance's fault. And it's really got everybody shaking in their boots. It's got everybody questioning the Alliance and questioning their convictions and what the world is like. The theme here is apathy. People are comfortable with their lives, and they don't want to question the government, and they don't want to think about the way the world really is. And so you have a couple talking heads on television that are really interesting, almost a la Frank Miller in their discussion about the pros and cons of the way the Alliance runs things. And one guy, one side of this is like vehemently for the Alliance, the other one is vehemently against it. And vehemently, I guess vehement is always a negative word. Vehemently against, the other one is a decidedly for. And it's cool, just the sheer number of pages before we finally get to the Firefly crew, because the beginning of this is all, where are they? No one can find them. And if they are actually real heroes, wouldn't they want to be found? And then the book goes to them and deals with them. We find out where everybody is. We see, including Jane, who is now off the ship. We deal with Inara and Mal's new relationship. They're finally a couple now. That's all very interesting. We're seeing Zoe dealing with the death of her husband. That's really sad, and I really like the way that Zach Whedon is handling all of that. The setup for the new plot moving forward is organic and it's gripping, and I just loved everything about this. The art is also pretty good. The art here is by, like I said, Jorge Yanti. I didn't know if he was involved in the writing too, because I don't know him, but it looks like Zach Whedon is just writing this on his own. Good, that's fantastic. It's really great. The art is serviceable. I like that it's very, and like I said, this guy might have worked on the Buffy Angel stuff. I'm just not. I just don't remember his name because I'm only somewhat familiar with those. So it looks a little bit like those, especially this is some of the season 8 stuff. But I'm sorry, some of the season 9 stuff. But so it's not photorealistic, but the characters all look like themselves, and it's not super detailed, but I can always tell what's going on. The colors are nice. Anyway, I could go on and on about this, but suffice it to say, if you really liked Firefly and Serenity, and if you are not usually a comic book reader, you owe it to yourself to read this anyway. This reads very much like storyboards for a revival of this TV show. I am incredibly impressed with this. This is fantastic. Next up, and I guess I put a couple of the very best books this week right at the front, but we've got Daredevil number 36, which is the end of this run of Daredevil. Now, that's not to say that it is the end of Wade on Daredevil. Wade is relaunching this book with a new number 1, which at first, as I often do, I kind of rolled my eyes at until I read it, and it makes perfect sense. Not just in that he's taking the book in a very new direction. I'm not spoiling anything because this has been solicited. I mean, we've been told this in solicitations. Daredevil is moving to a new city now, and at the start of the next run, and so it'll be a good jumping on point. It'll be a good starting place for people that didn't read this stuff. But more than that, it actually makes perfect sense, even thematically, even story-wise, and I'm really kind of impressed with that. I don't want to give too much away because I really want people to read this. I think this is a pretty great read, even if you haven't read any of the rest of it, to be honest with you. I think maybe the jumping on point is here, because, yeah, this is very much the end of, the culmination of everything, in a lot of ways that Wade's been doing, but really, the culmination of everything happened a few issues ago when we got the Bullseye stuff, and so when we finally found out what that whole story was about from the beginning, Bullseye's machinations, pulling strings and stuff, and since then it's been more of an intimate, personal thing for Matt Murdock. It was always that, but like the big bad guy plot, the Sons of the Serpent, not as big of a deal. It's kind of more about where Matt Murdock is going in his life in a personal fashion. At the end of the last issue, Matt Murdock in a courtroom outed himself as Daredevil, and he had a very good reason for doing that. We find out here that Matt realized that he needed to do that in order to call attention to something terrible that his opponent in the courtroom was doing. The judge is crooked, and one of the sons of the serpents was going to use Daredevil's or Matt Murdock's identity as Daredevil against him. So before he had a chance to do that, Matt Murdock said, "I'm just going to put all the cards on the table right away." Really brilliant, bold move, quite the risk, and I love seeing it unfold. This is Sam Neill's best art in this entire book. Wow, is this pretty! A lot of really dynamic action, but then and one of the coolest splash pages I have seen in this book. But then at the same time, the really intimate, dramatic stuff with him and Foggy is beautifully rendered as well. There's a wonderfully emotional and touching scene between him and Foggy at the beginning of this that sets everything up. Some really nice non-linear storytelling there. This is a perfect ending for this run of the book, and like I said, starting over is going to make a lot of sense because of the way Wade is taking the way Daredevil stories end so often, doing it exactly the way that it's usually done, but not exactly the way it's usually done. I'm going to be really cryptic about this so that I'm not giving too much away, but a lot of Daredevil stories are Daredevil gets to the lowest place he can, and he has to build himself back up again and reinvent himself again. And it's a self-discovery kind of thing. It's dealing with his demons and with his overabundance of self-assuredness. He is the man without fear after all, and a lot of the times he creates his own problems because he is such a risk taker. I really love, by the way, that this is all about Matt Murdock having to pay the price, dealing with the consequences of how he dealt with people knowing that he was Daredevil in the first place, when that was first when he was first outed as Daredevil, and now that he's fine, and back then he lied and denied it and was able to kind of get away with it, and now he's finally having to pay the price for it so much later, years and of course dozens and hundreds of comic book issues later. Wow, Wade has such a good handle on the continuity of the series, and Daredevil never gets a pass, especially under Wade. He always has to go back and pay the price for stuff, and so this time he gets back to he gets to that low point, and he's gonna have to build himself back up again. But it's way different than last time, and it's way more optimistic and way more endearing than I've ever seen it done before. Wow, is this great! Next up, we've got Uncanny X-Men number 17 by, of course, Brian Michael Bendis and Chris Bocciolo. Here we've got another the new Kid X-Men who just suddenly became mutants, having to be taught some kind of lesson about what to do with their powers and how to be X-Men. This is really good, though. Basically, they find themselves in this really strange place where it's the future. It's basically supposed to be like what the landscape of America, of the state they're in. What state is it? It's like it's Montana or something. Would look like in like 100,000 years. And so they're dealing with what looks like kind of a prehistoric area, but it's actually a futuristic area, and they're kind of dropped there all of a sudden by magic. She just leaves them there, and they have to figure out what to do with themselves and how to handle the situation. And it's really interesting to see how they cope with this. They're speculating about where they are. They think maybe they're in the danger room. Maybe they're actually, maybe they've time traveled. Maybe they're in another magic alternate universe. What are they in right now? And I gotta tell you, I'm still in love with this Goldballs guy. He is so much fun in this. He's hilarious, and he's getting more and more confident with his powers and with being an X-Man all the time. Eventually, I'm seeing this guy as potential leadership material. I think it's really interesting, the progression that Bendis is doing with him. Everybody else is a lot of fun, too. There is one character who makes a huge mistake in this that is going to cost him, and at the end, there's kind of a big surprise about what's actually been going on all the time. It's not really At least it's played as a big surprise. It's kind of what I thought was probably going on, but it wasn't any less satisfying. We've been doing a lot of these kind of issues, and I kind of figured I would be bored with it. But these characters need some time to grow. We need to see them being trained. We need to see them becoming actual X-Men, and not just the kind of token characters that have to be here because we're dealing with the fact that mutants have popped up again, and that they're just kind of serviceable, but just sort of props for that. So I really like that we're getting some dimension for these characters, and this one's a lot of fun, quite good. Next up, Night of the Living Deadpool number 3, the issue that is finally kind of winning me over on this series. I've been a little bit down on this, talking about how it's not really up to the same quality as Bunn's other Deadpool stuff. It's quite a bit different in what it's doing story-wise, and doesn't seem very related to that stuff, and also seems to before this to just be kind of a generic zombie story that just happened to have Deadpool in it. Now I completely understand what Bunn was doing with this, where he's going, why it's Deadpool. By the end of this, the entire infection is explained. It's actually surprisingly kind of like the Reavers in Serenity, believe it or not. It turns out to be an AIM experiment gone wrong, and it also has very interestingly stuff to do with Deadpool, and Deadpool starts to feel like he is maybe somewhat responsible for what happened here. There's kind of a mystery built up as to why he's the last superhero. That was already there at the beginning, and we're starting to get that question answered a little bit. He also stops seeing his healing factor stops working in this, and that plays a major role into what's going on here too. Anyway, basically the best way to sum this up is the plot thickens and goes totally in a different direction than where I thought it was going. This is really actually quite a good read, and finally I don't really feel like I know where we're going. I don't really know what's going to happen with this. It looks like it might actually turn into kind of a cool character piece for Deadpool, and what happens to Deadpool at the end of this makes me go, what? Where can Bunn go with this now? I was really impressed with this. So if you read the first issue like I did and you went, what's the point? Give it more time. This is going somewhere. Next up, I'm going to review a new series, and this, unlike me, I don't review a lot of stuff like this, but this is Dexter Down Under #1, also published by Marvel. This is written by Jeff Lindsay, who created Dexter Morgan, and who did the Darkly Dreaming Dexter book series that Dexter, the Showtime TV show, was based on, and the art in this is by Dalibor Talajic. So I have not quite finished the Dexter TV show. I've been working my way through it. I'm almost done, though. I'm nearly at the end of 8. I posted a recommends recently where I discussed Dexter, and I had actually shot that about 3 weeks before I posted it. So in that, if you're watching this and going, Captain Logan, how'd you get that far? When we recorded that, I had only gotten to the end of season 3, beginning of 4. I'm now almost all the way through the series, and so this came out this week, and I thought, well, I'm on a Dexter kick right now anyway. I've got to read this. I don't know if this is supposed to be set in the same universe as the TV show, or if it's supposed to be set in the universe of the books. It's actually really quite ambiguous, and it helps that. Now I mean, the character in this, the way he's drawn, is definitely reminiscent of Michael C. Hall. So I think maybe it's supposed to be of the TV show, but it's very ambiguous because Lindsay kind of writes him a little bit differently than he was in the TV show. He seems a little bit more lighthearted and laid back than he was there in his internal monologue, at least with what I'm reading here. I've not read the novels yet. I'm planning to read at least the first one and see if I like it, and see what the prose is like, because I'm curious. But anyway, he doesn't read quite the same in this. But also, the ambiguity is furthered by the fact that none of the supporting characters, with the exception for a very brief panel of Captain Matthews, is anybody from the TV show in this besides Dexter, any of his supporting cast. Basically, what happens in this is Dexter is called up by an Australian police department to travel out to Australia and to help them solve a series of of murders that seem to be caused by some crazy white supremacist. What is it with comic books and white supremacists lately? I seem to be reading a lot of stuff about modern Nazis. Anyway, there's this weird group called I forget what it's called. It's like something for a white Australia, which is just bizarre. And basically, the story focuses on Dexter being excited about getting to go on a vacation, and that's kind of what he's using this for. And so he goes to Australia, and he is surprised by all the differences in the culture. I'd love to see somebody. By the way, I'd love to talk to somebody who's read this, who is from Australia. I'd love to give this book to Shades and see just how close they get, because a lot of the stuff in this seemed a little bit kind of over the top to me in making a big deal out of how different everything is. Certainly, some of the vernacular is quite a bit different, but I wondered about some things like, and again, I've just never been to Australia, so I don't know, but I wondered about some things like, for instance, do kangaroos actually just walk around on the streets of major urban centers and stuff like that? There is definitely a stranger in a strange land thing going on here. Dexter kind of treats Australia like he's in some kind of alien landscape, and that was kind of fun, and also, but more often, kind of irritating, really, the way it's written. Honestly, I was not in love with this. I didn't really care for the language in Dexter's internal monologue. He just didn't read like a serial killer to me. I was, and I know Dexter, even in the TV show, is not your everyday average run-of-the-mill serial killer, but he kind of just read as like a normal guy to me. I wasn't really getting that kind of eerie atmosphere of I'm liking this guy and he's fun, but also he's about to kill someone, that kind of thing. So, maybe it will win me over as it goes along. Maybe it'll pick up. Right now, really the first issue is just he goes to Australia and he investigates a crime scene. And he hangs out with and works with an officer who reminds him a lot of his sister. And that's it. That's pretty much what you get. I wasn't really impressed with the dialogue or the internal monologue, like I said, but the art's okay. Not real detailed with the landscapes, with the backgrounds and stuff. It seemed a little bit Spartan, but it's all right. It's definitely, it's readable, but not great. I will give it a second go because I'm curious. And I think this is probably just going to be a miniseries anyway. So yeah. So I will probably continue reviewing this. I hope it gets better. Not terrible, but not great either. Next up, Supergirl number 28, Red Daughter of Krypton. Yeah, I have been so excited about Supergirl becoming a Red Lantern, mostly because a lot of people's big complaint about Supergirl at the beginning of the 52 run was, well, all she does is hit things. That's how she solves problems. She's not a very likable character. Well, now we're really dealing with that. This is a character for whom everything has gone wrong, and doesn't it make a lot of sense that she would have enough rage that a Red Lantern ring would show up and go to her? And as we've seen with people like Guy Gardner, a lot of the time this turns out to be kind of therapeutic in a really interesting way, where you deal with your rage and then you move on. Nobody seems to be a Red Lantern forever unless they embrace their rage and then they become kind of supervillains in denial about themselves. And I expect that this is the way that we're finally going to get Supergirl to go to a more level-headed place. I don't think she's going to be a Red Lantern for very long, and I think this is her rock bottom. This is where Supergirl has to get psychologically before she can finally build herself back up and figure out how in the world to how she's going to live in a world without Krypton. And so anyway, we finally get to see that happen here. These were published out of order, and I don't know if that was intentional. We have already in Green Lantern and Red Lanterns in that cool flip book seen Supergirl, unless this came out last week and I just got it in my pull box this week, but I think this actually came out this week. Whatever. Anyway, for my reading experience anyway, I have already seen this character as a Red Lantern, and now I have to backtrack and actually see her become a Red Lantern while she's fighting with Lobo. So with Lobo. So anyway, this wasn't real riveting to me because I knew what was coming, and of course, from the cover, you already know what's going to go on, even if you haven't read that Red Lanterns issue, but I really kind of think that it would have been fun, and I know this is just the nature of the beast with comic books. We're probably going to sell more copies of this if the Red Lanterns people feel like they need to pick it up, and vice versa. But boy, just as a reader, just if I had my druthers, how cool would it have been to I'm reading Supergirl, I'm reading, I'm like, what? She becomes a Red Lantern? That's crazy. And so I had that reaction when I heard it was going to happen in the news, but in comic news, but it's been like a month and a half now, and so I'm like, oh, it would have been fun to have gotten to experience that firsthand. But whatever, this isn't bad. Supergirl is dealing a lot with people trying to exploit her superpowers. She keeps coming up against people who want to use her for things, trying to manipulate her, telling her that what they think she wants to hear, and Lobo is no exception. Lobo in this reveals that he actually came to her on purpose, and that he is wanting to use her to help him find the Lobo that stole his identity and actually looks like the Lobo that we all know from pre-52 Superman stuff. Convoluted, bizarre, no idea what's going on there. Anyway, and she's not going to have any of it, and goes to town on him real hard, trying to and kind of trying to. I mean, I don't know if she's trying to kill him, but that would probably happen if she had her way. And so anyway, she ultimately, at the end of this, I mean, I'm not spoiling anything, gets the Red Lantern ring, and that's pretty much what happens. And then we've already seen, stuff that happens after that, even in Red Lanterns and Green Lanterns. So I'm going to be interested to see how those two books deal with her. Like if she's with the Red Lanterns now, what is the main Supergirl book going to do with her solo-wise? I am predicting probably a Red Lantern Supergirl crossover, because I don't really know what she's going to be able to do on her own unless she just runs off from the Red Lanterns and isn't part of the team. But I would really like to see her as part of the team for a while. I think it would be really interesting to see those characters kind of help her to become more level-headed. Like I think Guy Gardner could actually teach her a lot. And wouldn't it be really cool to see Guy Gardner as a Red Lantern mentor Supergirl because of some of the things that he's been learning lately about how to control himself and how to be a real superhero. Next up, Batman 66, number 8, with Jeff Parker as always, and with art by Ruben Procopio in this first story, and somebody else doing some really interesting Art Deco stuff in the second story. Well, sort of Art Deco. Let's see. Same guy. Wow, really? The guy who drew the beginning of this also drew the second story. That's fantastic because they look entirely different. I said Art Deco. It's almost a little bit more storybook. It reminds me a little bit of some little golden books I read when I was a kid. Also reminiscent of some early Western comics pulp stuff, and that's what it's doing. The second story in this is Shane, the villain. The first story in this is King Tut. Both are really, really fun. This first story is probably Jeff Parker's, because the last story the last issue I reviewed, the main story, I said was probably my favorite so far, just in how reminiscent it is of the TV show and how well it captures that tone and style. This issue is Jeff Parker's best attempt at capturing that, all the way down to finally having Batman and Robin say atomic batteries to power, turbines to speed. That is in there, but there's a lot of other stuff. There's some alligator repellent that is like some shark repellent that's modified to be alligator repellent, and King Tut's dialogue sounds just like the stuff that guy was saying in the TV show. And Jeff Parker, by the way, does a really good job in finding ways, or I guess the team on this book in general, of finding ways to make the delivery work without an actor delivering it, where certain words are emphasized in the way they're printed, either by being bolder or larger, or just in the way they're printed, where if you know the character well enough in your head, you can hear them saying it and you can go, oh, that's what they're after. That's what they're trying to do with this, because we don't have the actor here to deliver it for us. That's a really tough thing sometimes in comic books, and really prose in general. where when you're dealing with characters that we're used to hearing voices for in how to get across the ideas you want to, especially when you're dealing with comedy, without that voice there to deliver the material. And he does a really good job with that here. So in this, King Tut is it's actually a time travel story, believe it or not. King Tut transports Batman and Robin back in time so that he can steal stuff from in the past that he thinks belongs to him in the first place, because King Tut in 60s Batman is a college professor who got hit on the head and thinks that he's the real King Tut. And at the beginning of this, he seems reformed. That's a big thing with 60s Batman, villains that pretend to be reformed and aren't. And he's amassed all this wealth, but he seems to have done it legitimately, and he says that I'm still going to take over Gotham City, but I'm going to do it the American way. I'm going to buy it, and that's what he deals with in this. Anyway, it's very funny. The second story is a shorter one, and it's dealing with the villain Shane, and it's traditional Western kind of train heist stuff, and that's really fun too. We get to see Batman in a cowboy hat. We get to see a lot of really fun Western tropes played out, and anyway, I really enjoyed that too. So this series continues to be all kinds of fun. You get so much bang for your buck in this. They're shorter stories. You always get 2 stories in an issue, but you never feel shafted. It never feels like, that would have been better if it was more elongated. It very much feels like a story that could be told in a 22-minute episode of the show, and manages to do it in fewer pages than 22, but I'm always satisfied. I have loved every issue of this, and it still continues to be just really fantastic. Next up, I'm going to talk about Batman and Two-Face, number 28. This is by Peter Tomasi with art by Patrick Gleason, and interesting that sometimes the character in this, now that Robin's gone and it's Batman and whoever he happens to be working with, I still wish this book was called Batman Ampersand, isn't always like a guy that's like a sidekick type character. Sometimes it's a villain if he has to sort of have an uneasy alliance with them. Here, Two-Face is still mostly antagonistic, but Batman has to save him, and this is, I don't usually read this book, but every now and again I'll jump back in and kind of see what it's doing. I have a few books like that I just kind of jump in and out of. This is one of them, and I was curious about this one this week, just flipping through it, because the art looked really dynamic and exciting, and I wanted to see what was going on with Two-Face, because notoriously, Two-Face doesn't have a ton of really, really great stories outside of, Long Halloween and stuff like that. This is pretty good. I don't love the dialogue. I question some of Peter Tomasi's word choice with Batman. I feel like some of his dialogue is a little bit inconsistent. I feel like he's a little bit melodramatic. But the plotting is really quite good, I think. Now, I didn't read the first part of this, so I'm reading this by itself, kind of jumping into it. This issue, I think, kind of finishes the story at the end. Yeah, it's pretty much done by the end of this. Although it gets Two-Face to kind of in interesting potential new status quo, and Two-Face is and by status quo, I mean something happens in this, and I don't want to give away what it is, but I really wonder where they're going to go with Two-Face after this. But anyway, this is really dealing a lot with the history of Bruce and Harvey Dent, and I really like the mirroring that goes on here between their characters. Batman thinks that if Two-Face was more like him in the way he dealt with his traumas in his past, of course dealing with the death of his wife, the way Bruce had to deal with the death of his parents, that he would be rehabilitated and he wouldn't have the psychosis he has, that he could leave a relatively normal life. And Two-Face, of course, doesn't believe him and doesn't like the way Bruce looks at the world. He, of course, Two-Face, of course, famously looks at things in a black and white sort of way. Batman looks at things in a shades of gray sort of way. There's this really cool moment where he says, Two-Face, you need to look at your, you need to stop looking at one of the two sides of the coin and realize there is a third side. And that is the line in between the two sides, the portion in between where the two opposites come to a midpoint, and you need to find that midpoint in your life. I think it's an interesting idea to look at the shades of gray as not morally ambiguous so much as finding that middle ground, being a well-rounded person, not being one extreme or another. The idea that good and evil, at least in a person, that good and bad are the extremes, and everybody has both, and you have to find a way. You want to be. You want to be as good a person as you can, but also you need that other side of yourself as well. That's part of who you are. There was a Star Trek original series episode that dealt with that, where Captain Kirk is split into two, and his good side can't live without his evil side, and so this issue is kind of dealing with that too, and it's Batman kind of laying out his philosophy on the table, and that's kind of he sees his lifestyle as that's what he's done. He's embraced the darkness in order to facilitate the good. That for him, that is that middle road, that well-rounded kind of mentality, and I really like how that's playing out. We get some flashbacks in seeing the way in which Bruce was connected to Harvey Dent and his wife Gilda, and in this version he actually introduces them to each other, which is an interesting new element, unless that was there in other incarnations, but I like the way that played out here. Anyway, I thought this was really interesting, and pretty decent storytelling. Like I said, I just wasn't real sure about some of the dialogue with Batman. I thought it was a little melodramatic. Next up, real quick, this is my last DC book this week. It's Scribblenauts Unmasked #2. And I continue to be impressed with this for not just being a silly kid book, but actually telling some story, even with the preposterous situation of we've got a guy in Maxwell who is able to draw in a notebook and make anything he wants to. And how can you tell a story with that when that guy could do anything he wanted to? Well, in this he actually loses that ability for a while, and it's nice to see some characters actually sort of in danger for once. This is so much more thickly plotted than I ever expected it to. At first, it looks like it's just a big, standard Lex Luthor plot, where it's a cool Lex Luthor plot, where he's trying to make everybody think that Superman is just an invading alien, and that they need to put their trust in human beings and not in Superman. We've heard this a thousand times from Lex, and people are buying into it. And partially, it's because people who used to be close to Superman are turning against him, like Lois Lane, and actually coming out and publicly saying, "Yeah, Lex Luthor is right." And so there's a mystery about why that's happening and what's going on, and it's not exactly what you'd think it is. At the end of this, there's somebody else pulling the strings, and who that is not surprising, but it looks like it's even bigger than that, and that's really cool. I love how not dumbed down the language is in this. I think I've talked about that before, where it is an all-ages book. It is a kid's book, but I think adults would really get a kick out of this, and I think it's really impressive how everybody talks like you would expect them to, sort of, and then it mixes an adult vocabulary with a more childlike kind of tone, if that makes any sense at all. I think it's really cool the way that it finds a balance for that. The video game does that. This does that equally well. I think it's really fun. There are a couple of really funny homages in this one, and I'll reveal one of them for you. The one that just cracked me up is you've got, like I said, these characters being presumably mind controlled by Lex. We find out that there's something bigger going on later. And one of them is Jimmy Olsen, and he quotes, I won't tell you exactly what the line is, but he quotes Lex from Superman Returns, the Kevin Spacey version, and there's a point where Jimmy Olsen goes, "Wrong!" and I couldn't believe that was in there. I thought that was really funny. Anyway, I'm really enjoying this, and surprised that there's some real story being told in this, and I don't think it's just for kids, but I also think it's great for kids, and I think it would challenge them in the more advanced reading department. I got 2 more books to review, and the first of them is IDW's X-Files Conspiracy, Ninja Turtles #1. This is the third part of the X-Files Conspiracy series, and I didn't realize this when I reviewed the last one of these, when I reviewed the Ghostbusters one, but the idea with this is it's actually a 6-part miniseries, but they're being labeled as one-shots, I guess, so that people who are into one series might pick it up and not be turned off by the number. That's indicated very much by the fact that the part 3 of 6 X-Files Conspiracy logo is incredibly tiny. So it lets people like me that want to know that, but everybody else says buy this because it's X-Files and Ninja Turtles together. But it works on that level. The Ghostbusters one did, this one even more so, where it's furthering the story, the plot thickens, and the plot is actually really thickening here. I felt like there wasn't enough going on in the Ghostbusters one. This one is actually really furthering an ongoing narrative where the Ninja Turtles are dropped in and then they come back out in a fairly organic way. And this, I think, is readable on its own, though. I think if you're just reading Ninja Turtles, it's right in the middle of what's been going on with the Ninja Turtles. It's kind of a quick interlude for them while they're in the middle of the Northampton stuff. So we're still in the aftermath stuff after City Fall, and still dealing with Leonardo not knowing his place in the world and having to reintegrate with his brothers. And I was really surprised to see that stuff in this. IDW with the Ninja Turtles has such a good handle right now on continuity and when to publish things, and this is no exception, and I was really surprised by that. I really enjoyed that. There's some poking fun here of the whole, I think this is what's intended, of the whole Michael Bay Ninja Turtles thing, where for a while they were supposed to be aliens instead of mutants, and then I think there's been a rewrite now where that's not the case. But the Lone Gunmen are going to find the Ninja Turtles now because they think that they are involved in this in this string of murders that they're investigating, and they think that they're aliens, and the Ninja Turtles very angrily, Leonardo's mostly who they're dealing with, tells them that no, we're not aliens, we're mutants, and I thought that was pretty fun. This whole thing was really fun, more jam-packed with material, more dense than the last one of these that I read, and I was pretty impressed with that. Basically what's going on here is they are in the Lone Gunmen, and I understand this better now than I did with the Ghostbusters one, because I still have not got my hands on the first part of this, because it wasn't in my pull box the first week it came out, and I guess my shop didn't have enough of them, and so anyway, I'm still waiting to get my copy. So now I know that they're dealing with a lot of supernatural things at once. Vampires who are killing people, and then they have like clues from the future, and it's very involved and kind of crazy. But it's really super fun. I like the setup here that it's vampires working out of a pizzeria, and they think that the Ninja Turtles are some of them, and then they find out that they're not. It's kind of fun that, they find a way for pizza to be involved. I have a very silly, incredibly nerdy beef with this, which is the Ninja Turtles in this continuity apparently love anchovies and only eat anchovies on pizza, which is the entire opposite of the 1990 movie where where at least Michelangelo hated anchovies. I was surprised by that. I wonder if that's intentional or if it's arbitrary or what. It doesn't matter. It does not have to be continuous with that movie. Nobody leave a comment and be like, God, Captain Logan, why are you nitpicking everything? Yeah, I know. I just thought I'd mention it because I was surprised by it. Moving on, last book I want to review tonight is a book that I am so surprised by. Had no expectations for this. This was Jason's pick for the week. Now, this is a book that I wasn't able to let Jason read because it's a more adult thing. But I take Jason into the comic store, and I used to do this. I brought it back starting last week, where I let Jason pick any book in the store that's new that he thinks might looks fun, and I'll let him read it if it's age appropriate, and if not, I'll get it anyway and review it. And This week he grabbed, which I guess this also doubles as an indie pick. Jason picked Loki, Ragnarok, and Roll from Boom Studios. This is by Eric M. Esquivel and Jerry Gaylord. So Jason grabbed this just because it's Loki, and of course it didn't occur to him, of course, Jason's 3, that Loki is a character anything but from Marvel and from the Avengers, and of course as everybody is aware, Norse mythology characters are fair game. Anybody can use them and reinvent them and do anything they want with them, and because Stan Lee, when he started doing Thor in Marvel, used so much of the lore and iconography and stuff from there, you're going to see a lot of stuff in this that you will recognize and go, well, that's just like Marvel. But this book does a really good job of separating itself, of making itself stand out from the Marvel stuff. It pokes fun at that stuff in some kind of cool ways, and even the title. When I first looked at this, I went, Ragnarok and Roll. Is it really pretending like it was the first thing that ever said that? That was the name of a story in Simonson's run. And I was like, does it know that, or does it think it's being clever? And then at the end of this, there is a sound effects word that is right out of Simonson's run and clearly was on purpose. Crack-a-thoom. And I was, because I've seen that in Simonson's run, and it was done in the big letters. And I was like, they are homaging Simonson in this, but they're homaging all kinds of other stuff in this, and it is surprisingly entertaining. This is really good. I was very surprised by it. Basically, what's going on here is, in this version, the Norse gods are actually thought beings created by people's imaginations. And so they exist in a realm outside of normal reality because no one can just straight up go there and see them because they live in this different plane of existence, and it's very different from the Marvel thing of just it's a different it's a different dimension. Here it's like the plane of thoughts, and at first I was like, well, that's a little bit silly. But then the book is really silly, and it owns it, and it's awesome. What this does is it says every god you've ever heard of, every pantheon, is real because people came up with it, and they're thought beings. So it makes perfect sense, including the giant spaghetti monster, and it is the god of like internet memes. The flying spaghetti monster, that's hilarious, and when it talks, it says LOL. I lost my mind at how funny that was. There's a lot of stuff like that in this. It's really fun. Thor is just an obnoxious meathead. He's basically the Thor before Thor becomes worthy of his hammer, and he just solves every problem with his fists, and he's incredibly self-absorbed and way too arrogant for his own good. And Loki in this is really sympathetic. He's very anti violence, and he is a manipulator, but he's being the god of mischief he's supposed to be. In this, it's like, because like the Norse gods in this kind of wear their themes almost like on a t-shirt. It's not a t-shirt, but it's like they might as well wear them on a t-shirt. They have their logos like as part of their costumes, and so he is just the god of mischief. That's what he is. And he is sent on a mission by Odin to deal with the frost giants, and Odin insists that Thor goes with him, and he's like, well, that's stupid. It's a diplomatic mission. All Thor does is hit things. And Odin's like, well, you have to take him. So he takes him, and of course Thor kills a bunch of frost giants. So then they go back, and Odin says, Loki, someone must take the fall for this, and it's gonna be you, I guess, because everybody loves Thor, and they'll buy that it was Loki's fault. And Loki's like, well, that's stupid. You shouldn't have sent him with me in the first place. Why don't I have to be banished? So he gets sent to Earth, to Midgard. I don't know if they call it that in this. And he becomes a rock god. That's what happens in this. Loki becomes a rock god. and he starts hanging out with a bunch of devil worshippers who play rock and roll, and he becomes a rock god. And it's hilarious. Now, I don't know why Odin was ridiculous enough to insist. At first, you know, my critic brain turned on and went, well, this all seems very easy and contrived, in order to get him to Asgard. And then I turned on my thinking person's brain and I said, well, I think there's something else going on here. I think Odin did this on purpose. Now, we'll see at the end of the series. This is a 4-issue miniseries. We'll see if that's explained or not. And if it's not, then my critic brain will come back and say, well, that was stupid and contrived, and you know, Odin should have known better. But it looks like there's a point here for him going there, and it's really funny. It's very clever. It's cartoony, but in a fun way. I'm not in love with the art, but it serves this material really well. It is super overly exaggerated cartoony, but it is that kind of a thing. This is not for kids. You get to the devil worshippers at the end. There's some kind of BDSM type stuff, not sexually explicit or anything, but just it's kind of there. You know, you can kind of tell. And but there's not a whole lot of language. It's not super violent yet, but it definitely is more of an adult kind of book, just in its you know, themes and ideas, but I really enjoyed this. I thought this was a whole lot of fun, and I would highly recommend this. Okay, right now I'm going to go to Book of the Week, and picking Book of the Week this week is tough, because there were a lot of really good ones. I kind of wish I could pick like 3. But I think I'm going to have to go with the first book I reviewed tonight, which was Serenity #1. I was blown away by this, and I feel like the show is back reading this, man. It's really, really good. So that's my favorite book for the week. And cover is also tough. I didn't pick this ahead of time. Let me mull this over for just a second. I'm between 2. And also, by the way, runner-up, the Serenity cover is really nice. That is some photorealistic stuff, and it looks really pretty. But very emotional cover. But I'm gonna go with, and I mean, I have seen this cover for a while now, because we saw this back when it was announced that this book was getting canceled, or not canceled, but ending and starting over. But I do really love the cover for Daredevil 36, and this is another Samney cover, and it's really highly detailed. If you start looking at it, there's some kind of fun little Easter eggs, including there's a box that says DD Volume 3, 2011 to 2013. So the cover itself is kind of dealing with the end of not just Matt Murdock's regular life in New York City and leaving his firm, but also the end of the book itself. So I think that's really cool. Well, right now we're gonna go ahead and jump over to Books Captain Logan Doesn't Read with Superhero Enthusiast, and let's find out what he has to talk about this time.
Book don't feel. Hello, Geekvolutionaires, and welcome to BCLDR, Books Captain Logan Doesn't Read. I am, of course, Alex, Superhero Enthusiast, here to review, like the title of the show says, Books Captain Logan Doesn't Read. Before I get started, I just want to give a shout out to Ahmed Al-Samari, Renwick Davis, and Mr. Dan Tor himself for giving me some Spider-Man suggestions, which I requested in the previous segment of this that I did. I really appreciate it, guys, and I'm looking forward to reading some good Spider-Man. The first book that I'm going to cover this week was actually one that I mentioned last time that I almost picked up last week, so it's a book from, I guess, last week. And that's She-Hulk #1. This has got to be one of the best first issues I've read in a long time. Right up there with Marvel's Miss Marvel #1 as well. This book is sort of in the vein of things like Hawkeye that kind of cover superheroes sort of in their everyday lives. She-Hulk, of course, is a lawyer. And this is written by Charles Sewell, who also does Swamp Thing, which I'm covering. And apparently he is a practicing lawyer. Which is odd, because I don't know how he has time to do both that and write comic books, but he's the perfect person to cover something like this. So basically we start this issue off with Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, going into a meeting at the law firm that she works at, and her bosses are not really thrilled with her, despite the fact that she's doing a really tremendous job. They brought her on because she was a superhero, and they thought that she would bring that kind of clientele to the firm. And they're complaining that Reed Richards, he files patents every day. Why isn't he filing patents through us? And she's quite peeved with that, so she quits. And this is kind of, I guess, one of those stories where she goes and sort of solves cases on her own. As I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but at the end of this, she sets up her own law firm. But the story in this involves some really cool stuff with Stark Enterprises, and I guess the main conflict in this book is somebody runs into Jennifer Walters in a bar and needs legal help, and of course she decides to help this person out, and it involves some stuff that has to do with Stark Industries or Stark Enterprises, which is something that I quite liked about this, because they go through a very long explanation for how the name of the company has changed over the years, and it's really a treat for continuity nerds like myself. So Jennifer Walters gets involved with the I guess legal department of Stark Enterprises, and it's basically just a single guy called Legal, and he says, I'm neither good nor bad, I'm just legal. That is, to the letter of the law. And that's kind of an interesting thing for superhero comics, in that legal isn't necessarily good or bad, because superheroes work to uphold the law, but obviously the law doesn't always bring justice, so that's why they have to be superheroes in the first place. And I'm really hoping that this book continues to sort of work with that idea and explore it, because I find it really interesting, and it's handled really well here. The art in this is fantastic, but what I like even better is kind of the paneling. It's not necessarily totally innovative and crazy like a J.H. Williams sort of a thing. But with a book like this that involves a lot of legal speak, which necessitates a lot of word balloons, you need to have your layouts really, really on point, so that the thing is easy to read and you're not like, which balloon am I supposed to be looking at? The artist here does this incredibly well, and the paneling even works really well when there's not word balloons in the panels. There's a page where I think there is only a one-word balloon on the page, and it's just kind of showing things going on in the background, but also in the foreground, and just how a short period of time things can change so much. And just so visually, this book is fantastic. The colors in this book as well are just beautiful, and it's incredibly colorful. It's a comic book. I like that, and it really works with the sort of a retro style for the art. We get to see Tony Stark in this in particular, and he looks She-Hulk as well. I mean, everybody kind of looks a little Jack Kirby-ish, and I like that. Tony has this really kind of retro look, and I really dig it. So She-Hulk #1, if this is the kind of thing that you're into, I mean, if you like Hawkeye, I think you'll really, really like this book. Speaking of colors and stuff, that leads me to my other Marvel book this week, which is Punisher #2. Yeah, colors leads me to Punisher. We don't immediately think colorful when we think of Frank Castle. We think black, white, maybe gray, red for lots of blood. But this book is incredibly colorful. There's all kinds of like oranges and pinks and greens and purples, and it's beautiful to look at. The story's kind of continuing on from what we saw last time. The big reveal at the end of issue #1 was that the Howling Commandos are after Frank Castle, and they're going to try and take him down now that he's moved to the West Coast. We don't really see a whole lot of them in this issue. They're just sort of scouting things out and trying to feel out Frank and where he is and what he's trying to do. But Frank kind of continues on his, Punisher like murder spree. Again, this has continued the trend of Frank as kind of an 80s action hero, and I'm absolutely loving this. This is a Frank Castle with a sense of humor, and he smirks in this, and he wears a Hawkeye t-shirt, ironically. There's, I guess, a little bit of hipster in Frank Castle, and I love it. There was another, I think it was just a promotional image from this artist of Frank Castle, and he's wearing an I'm Not Daredevil shirt, which I thought was hilarious, because, obviously Frank and Matt don't really get along. But I don't really want to reveal too much about the plot in this, and this isn't a book that's too plot heavy. I mean, it's Punisher, he goes around and kills people, bad guys. But I guess the main thing is just Frank is kind of scouting out these, I think they're kind of drug cartel type people, but who sort of amped up their game. We see a certain person that they're doing some deals with who wears a yellow outfit. I'll just say that. And there's actually a really big reveal at the end of this, which I quite liked. A villain, actually. Frank is going to be taking on some, I guess, more superpowered people. And that's kind of the thing that he brings up in this book, which is incredibly well written. That where crime is on the West Coast is sort of above what police can handle, but below what superheroes really bother to deal with. And so I guess that's Punisher territory for him. So I'm really curious to see where this goes. This book is so much fun. And again, it's a Punisher book. Why is this fun? This should be bleak. But it's great. If you're not reading this book, you should really give it a chance. We're only 2 issues in, so it'd be pretty easy to get caught up on. Punisher number 2, read it. I'm going to head on over to DC with a digital first book of Batman Beyond 2.0, number 14. Now, I said last time that the previous issue was sort of just a fill-in for this kind of future Man-Bat with the giant scruffy beard story. This one is not really fill-in like the last one, which filled in the backstory. This one is kind of just the climax, the action of the story. Literally half of this book is either Man-Bat people thrashing the police or Terry and Bruce in prison talking to one another. And they're kind of hashing out their issues because they had been kind of at loggerheads. And that's good to see. I think, obviously, Kyle Higgins is working to get these 2 guys working together again. But basically, I won't reveal too much of the plot, since there really isn't one. It's, like I said, it's mostly just action. And I mean, I'm not complaining. It's beautiful to look at. Some really great splash pages and panels. Again, like I said last time, the story here is kind of weak. Like, I'm not too terribly interested in what Kirk Langstrom is doing at this point in time. But the whole issue is sort of centered around whether or not Bruce thinks that the man that he knew is still in there. Which, again, is kind of odd, because, I mean, in the animated series, it's not like they were ever close. It wasn't like Bruce had a relationship with him like he did with Harvey Dent, where, like, they established in that show really well that they were friends before Harvey became Two-Face. But apparently they got to know each other over the years a little bit. But I won't spoil the reveal in this, since it kind of answers the question of whether or not that guy is still in there. But there's one issue left in this arc, and if this sounds interesting to you, I mean, if you're a really big Man-Bat fan, I don't think he has a huge fan base, but if you are, maybe check this out. If not, I might suggest kind of waiting till after the next issue to pick this one up. Because I suspect by then things will have sort of stabilized, and Terry will be kind of working with Bruce again, or at least, they'll be really, really leading towards that. There is kind of a cool little thing in this. There's an element that Kirk Langstrom needs for his whole plan. It's called Canium, obviously named after Bob Kane. And the thing I like about these books is they contain a lot of references to stuff, especially with them being very DCAU heavy. Obviously that reference isn't to the DCAU, but we're always seeing little hints and nods to things that, at least if you're kind of my generation, you grew up with. So it's kind of like, ooh, nostalgia. But overall, I really like this book. This isn't a story that I'm too terribly thrilled with, but it's still very good. My other book from DC this week was Wonder Woman, number 28. So I'm not really sure how to talk about this book. I'm going to maybe go off a bit of a rant, and I'll get around to it, because I kind of need to sort of make my point. I'm a really big Wonder Woman fan, and unfortunately there seems to be this perception that Wonder Woman is a difficult character to write. I don't feel like that's the case, but I feel like that idea has become sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it kind of feels to me like everybody, or almost everybody, who comes onto the Wonder Woman book or tries to tackle a Wonder Woman story feels like they need to completely reinvent the character from the ground up, rather than kind of do what's been done with the other two members of the Trinity, Batman and Superman, and that is just gradually evolve them and their rogues gallery and their whole world kind of over time. That hasn't happened with Wonder Woman, and so the character kind of just goes through these weird cycles and doesn't really make any progress. Now, maybe there's some type of really deep, like, reference to Greek myth there, and how, you know, the sons replace the fathers and stuff, and it's just the same cycle repeats for generation after generation. But I don't necessarily want that with Wonder Woman, because I like that character and I want to see all of her rogues and stuff get adapted to modern times, because I actually think Wonder Woman has one of the better rogues galleries in comics. They just haven't been modernized the way that, say, Batman's rogues have. But all of this leads me to this book, and Brian Azzarello has yet again completely reinvented Wonder Woman from the ground up, and it doesn't really feel like a Wonder Woman book. I mean, the character of Wonder Woman is written to be like Diana. She still feels like Diana, but it kind of feels sort of like she's been relegated to guest character in her own book, in that this is just sort of this giant, sprawling Greek mythological epic. And I love Greek mythology. I mean, I grew up with superheroes and Greek mythology. Like, these are as much my stories as you know, Batman and Superman and stuff like that. But I don't really want to read that when I pick up a Wonder Woman comic. I want to read a Wonder Woman comic, and I don't think that it's unreasonable to ask that, you know, Wonder Woman comic be a Wonder Woman comic. Now, that said, if this weren't good, I wouldn't still be picking it up. It is really good, and so I'm just trying to read it with the mindset of, this is just a Greek mythology comic that's, you know, where the myths have kind of been modernized. I just sort of ignore the fact that it says Wonder Woman on the title, and just sort of, you know, see it as like Amazon has fun adventures. But okay, what's been going on in this book? Basically, Zeus at the very beginning of this has been missing or has died. He, like he did in the myths, impregnated a mortal woman, and she's had a baby now who she called Zeke, and everybody's been kind of warring over the child, and Apollo has basically assumed the throne of Olympus. And right now there is another child of Zeus, the firstborn, who's sort of battling Apollo for the throne, and that was a big part of this issue in particular. Is just kind of them fighting, and it was pretty intense. Mount Olympus is kind of portrayed as like a skyscraper, and I really like the way that Apollo is drawn in this. But the other part of it is Zola, who had the child Zeke by Zeus, is kind of been frustrated with Wonder Woman and her group of weird friends, because like I said, this is sort of an ensemble book, not really a Wonder Woman book. She's kind of gone off chilling out with Dionysos, and there's this other group of people led by Cassandra, and they're trying to basically fight Olympus, so they kidnap Dionysus, and that's basically what happens in this issue. I won't kind of say what their plan is. Again, I mean, these are serialized stories, so there is a big, I don't want to say twist, but reveal at the end. It makes me kind of curious to see where things are going, but I don't know, like, if you like Wonder Woman, don't read this book, maybe. If you like Greek mythology or just really fun stories about people who you don't necessarily want to look up to, which in my opinion isn't really right for DC characters, but I won't get off on that rant too much. Maybe, like, do read this. I don't know, I'm so torn on it. Like, as a Wonder Woman fan, I don't like what they're doing. As a Greek mythology fan, I do. So at least, you know, the art is good in this. Cliff Chiang has this really kind of cool, modern sort of mod style that I really like. It's very high fashion in a way. That's really the best way I can describe it. And it's very colorful, and I like it. It's also very weird. Brian Azzarello does have a really good grasp on how Greek mythology works, but again, you know, I'm just torn on this. You know, it's not really Wonder Woman or Wonder Woman anything like I want to read, but it also is a great Greek mythology story. So, you know, take that for what you will. If you like that or don't like that, I don't know. My last book for this week was appropriately the last book in this run on this comic, and that was Conan the Barbarian number 25. Brian Wood has been absolutely killing it with this book. I've never been a huge Conan the Barbarian fan. I mean, I watched the movie when I was a kid. I never really read any of the books. I really like Frank Frazetta, the artist who did a lot of the covers for the Robert E. Howard books, but never really been too into Conan. He's just kind of a generally one-dimensional character. But Brian Wood has totally changed that. He is still Conan. I mean, he is still a guy who just kind of goes around, as a sellsword, essentially, having adventures and stuff. And that's there, but he feels like a real person. There's stuff going on behind the scenes internally with Conan. And he's a man. He's just a man who, grew up in a different time, the antediluvian world, and that necessitated a different kind of masculinity, a far rougher kind of masculinity. But we see Conan in this story get kind of tender. This is the story where Conan meets and falls in love with the love of his life, Belit, the queen of the Black Coast. She's a pirate queen, which is really cool. And basically for the previous 24 issues, they'd been going around having all these kind of fun adventures around the world. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been very heart-wrenching. They try to have a baby at one point, and it doesn't really work out. I won't spoil too much, since I guess this is the last issue. It's basically just Conan. It's kind of an epilogue in a sense. It's Conan dealing with, I guess, the loss of that love. I won't explain what happened, but I highly recommend people check this out. If you like sword and sorcery stuff, if you like just really good storytelling, and if you want to see Conan done in a way that's actually really, really good, definitely go back and pick up the trades for this, or check it out online on Comixology. It's all there. I'm really sad to see it go. This is one of my favorite books on my pull list. Yeah, it's just, I don't know if I'm going to continue going on with this book. I'm going to probably check out the next issue. It does continue on from the story. It's kind of interesting how it's sort of bookended, where Conan was originally going to the land of Kush, and he got intercepted by the pirates, and then, for several years went off and had all these adventures, and now he's like, I might as well just continue on going there. So that's kind of cool, and I guess that's where the next story is going to pick up. Who's writing it? I don't know. Whether or not it's going to be anywhere near this well written, I'm not sure. The art in this book has been fantastic as well. It's had kind of a revolving door for artists, basically new people kind of for every little mini arc. But everybody who's been on this has been fantastic, and it's a gorgeous book to look at. So Conan the Barbarian, I never thought that I would love something like this, but I do, and I'm really sad that it's over now. But hopefully the next team is at least half as good. If it is at least half as good, I'll keep reading this. That does it for me. This was kind of a light week for me. If there's anything Cap isn't reading or I'm not reading, and you want to see covered, maybe suggest in the comments. I might consider picking it up. I'm always looking for new stuff. We're kind of in this really cool, I don't want to say golden age of comics, because that is already a term that means something else, but comics are really awesome right now, and there's so much great stuff, and so much great stuff that you miss some of it sometimes. So I'm always looking for new stuff. Feel free to give suggestions. But that's it for me. I'm Alex, a superhero enthusiast, and back to you, Cap.
Thanks as always, enthusiasts. Really appreciate you helping me out with the show. And everybody, thanks as always for watching. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, check out Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas. And if you ever want to send me anything to review, you can always send things to my P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. I know I've said this 1,000 times, and we're not done with it yet, but eventually, when we are finished with Spawn Year, I'm working feverishly trying to get it done. I will be bringing back the Daily Comic Vault, and I will be reviewing a bunch of stuff that people have been sending over the last several months, so don't worry, I will get to your stuff if you decide to send anything. And in the meantime, thanks as always for watching. Really appreciate it. What a great week this week for comics. I had a blast reading and reviewing for you, and I hope you had a great time too. I will see you again very soon with lots more videos. Next week, I'm going to try really hard to get out the RoboCop Superhero Rewind, so look forward to that. Lots more gameplay videos coming up pretty soon on the Platforming Hour, because I'm working my way through Donkey Kong Country, the new Donkey Kong Country. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Sure appreciate it, and we'll see you soon. I'm Captain Logan. Happy reading!